Chicago, Fargo, Minnesota, Buffalo, Toronto, Winslow, Sarasota, Wichita, Tulsa, Ottawa, Oklahoma, Tampa, Panama, Mattawa, La Paloma, Bangor, Baltimore, Salvador, Amarillo, Tocopilla, Barranquilla, and Padilla, Amakil. I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. Across the desert bare, man. I breathe the mountain air, man. I've traveled, I've had my share, man. I've been everywhere.
This is Oversight Live, your advocate for good governance. We're putting the site back in. Oversight. Here's the watcher on the wall, your host, Ben Carpenter.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us here on Oversight. This is Ben Carpenter. Hey, it's Thursday evening, and we're gonna have some fun tonight. So you might be wondering what Oversight Live is. Well, here in Alaska, our state capital and legislature is only accessible by plane and by ferry. There's no road access. So we've got a situation where it's cost prohibitive for most people to go visit and keep their eyes on our government on a regular basis. So providing oversight is going to be our job. I'm going to be your road to Juneau until one can be built. Let's have some conversations about the committee meetings and the press releases and the ongoing of the legislature so that you are fully aware of what's going on. Of course, not everything that we bring or that happens in the legislature can be talked about in an hour in an evening, but we're going to do our best to prioritize some things and bring them to you so that you are aware of what's going on. And obviously that'll be my demonstrating my priorities of what I think is important. But it's going to be convenient. It's going to be relevant. You step in here at 7 p.m. every night and catch up on what's going on. You're not going to have to filter out the liberal news media. You will have to deal with my bias, and I am unabashedly a limited government, fiscal and social conservative, and that's how the lens of which I'm going to look at life. You have the opportunity to engage with me, your host, and others who are watching with the show too. If you have questions or comments, put them into the chat window there, and I'll address them on air or during the recording here. If you're watching the recording and you have questions, then you can email me at producer@oversightllive.com, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. If you've got good questions, I'm going to bring them up on air and, for the edification of everyone. If you've got a question, then somebody else has probably got the same question. So anyway, that's how you can get your questions answered, and together we'll be better informed. Anyway, we're going to attempt to make this fun tonight. I'm going to follow up with a conversation that I had this morning, if you were watching the Michael Dukes show. So we're going to tie these two shows in. Pretty amazing. Right on cue, you might say. I said, I was asked what I was going to talk about tonight, what my priorities were, or what do I think needs to be covered. And I said, well, I'm going to figure out what I'm going to talk about today by reviewing what's happened in the legislature. Lo and behold, and let me back up and say that one of the priorities that I was watching was what's the legislature going to do with regard to taxes in the oil gas line, Alaska LNG gas line. Well, lo and behold, Senate Bill 275 was read across the floor, and it's relating to natural gas and gas line projects. So I think we're going to chat about that today. It's a ginormous bill. I'm going to share my screen here. You can see the bill. Let me see if I can make that bigger for you, because you probably can't read that. Not that you're going to read this whole thing, because if I really quickly scroll to the bottom, that's 37 pages. That is a pretty good sized bill. So the details here for the specifics, and then we're going to jump into kind of an overview that I asked some help from artificial intelligence today to do some analysis. So this is a bill by the Senate Resources Committee. So this is Senator Giesel's committee. It was referred to resources, so they're going to have to take this up. And the next hearing that's scheduled on this is next Friday. So I don't know maybe they already had things scheduled for the meetings sooner than that. I understand much of the legislature is departing tonight. I bet you'll see some technical sessions tomorrow. The Iditarod is starting, and my understanding is there's a bunch of people that want to go hobnob and be present at the start of the Iditarod. Of course, it's an election year, so being present and seeing people is going to be on legislators' minds. Never mind the hard work that is supposed to be being done down in Juneau. Anyway, so after resources gets done with the bill, it goes to finance, and that's in the Senate side. It has not been to the House side because it's just been read across the floor on the Senate. So to get this bill passed is actually quite a bit of work still. And we're halfway through the legislative session this year. So my guess is, just guessing, that unless somebody fast tracks this, which it doesn't, I don't anticipate that they will, it's not going to get passed. But there is something that's really important we need to understand about this bill. First of all, we need to understand what the bill is and what it's saying, what it's being proposed, and then make an assessment on what do you think that means to the industry and to investors, to other countries that might be wanting to do business with us in our LNG project. What does it mean when the legislature produces a bill like this? That's going to be, I think, an important thing for us to understand. Just introducing the bill and having the conversations about this is likely to have an impact on people's perceptions of how friendly it is to do business in Alaska. Okay, so let's show you how I use ChatGPT. Some of you may be way ahead of me on what you can do with ChatGPT, but I'm going to, that's kind of small. Let me see if I can make that bigger. If I do this, okay, there we go. Okay, so all I did was I asked ChatGPT to summarize this bill. That's all I asked. So no, not asking for any kind of commentary or anything other than that. Just give me a factual summary on this bill. So high level, 275, Senate Bill 275 restructures state oversight, taxation, transparency related to natural gas projects, especially involving the Alaska Gasline Development Corporation and potential large-scale liquefied natural gas development. Wonder what they have in mind here, right? I mean, obviously, this is one specific project in mind. So you got four major focuses in the bill: legislative oversight and transparency of AGDC and the gas projects, and then taxation of natural gas related businesses, changes to oil and gas production tax rules, and new surcharge on LNG processing. So a little bit of specifics here. The bill expands what Legislative Budget and Audit Committee, which usually meets in the interim, it meets when the legislature is not in session. So after May, the Legislative Budget and Audit Committee kind of acts as the legislature with dealing with some issues. So they're going to have an expanded role in overseeing AGDC, requiring audits, expands their authority to review ownership structures, investments, and projects of AGDC, which is interesting. And AGDC must provide information to the legislator to support investment decisions. This is interesting. When AGDC negotiates participation in a revenue-generating project, that's what the pipeline is going to be, a revenue-generating project, it must negotiate an option for the state of Alaska to acquire an ownership or management interest. Can you imagine? Can you imagine these companies outside the state of Alaska, other countries that are like, yeah, we see what's happening in the Alaska legislature, and you want us to be partners with the Alaska legislature, with the state of Alaska? Are you kidding me? like Like these aren't professionals. People in countries and companies outside the Alaska, those are the professionals. They're looking in here and they're like, you guys are out of your mind. Notify legislative leadership when such options become available. Allow the legislature at least 180 days to decide whether to exercise the option. Require legislative approval by law before the state can take an ownership stake. So you got to wait on the legislature. So any project is going to move at the speed of the legislature. Who thinks that's a good idea? In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I have been saying for some time now that there are some legislators who really would like to scuttle this project. They really want to see the pipeline not get built. I'm like, if you were going to do that, if you were going to scuttle it, how would you do it? Would you produce some kind of bill or telegraph something to somebody that dissuades them from participating? Seems like this was like exactly what you would want. Okay, what else does the bill do? Creates tighter rules governing AGDC partnership and confidentiality. AGDC cannot enter a legal relationship with a foreign entity without legislative approval. Okay. Covered relationships, detailed as partnerships, joint ventures, joint ownership agreements, gas purchase agreements, investment agreements. AGDC must publish online information about owners, investors, lenders, creditors, gas producers. So basically, they've got to publish all of this while they're in negotiation, while there's business conversations going on, and other countries and companies who may not want to have just an exploratory conversation like this public for obvious reasons. They wouldn't have any say in the matter. The state legislature is saying, hey, this has all got to be public information. Remember, we put together a project scope, the legislature did, and said, hey, this is what we want our project to look like. And there were no biters for 10 years. Glenfarne came along and put together a different type of project that wasn't with the state ownership interests. And now we've got a project that's as close to going forward as it's ever been, right? Bill creates new tax on certain pass-through entities involved in natural gas infrastructure. A 9.4% tax applies to taxable income above $5 million for qualifying entities. Applies to pass-through entities such as partnerships, LLCs, S-corps, sole proprietors, if they're engaged in activities, owning or operating gas pipelines, supply gas to pipelines, gas treatment, carbon storage, LNG processing, selling gas transported. This is significant policy change, policy decision on how to deal with LNG and natural gas in the state. Okay, this bill would impose a new state surcharge on LNG processing specifically. 15 cents per 1,000 cubic feet of natural gas processed into LNG. Only applies to processors with capacity exceeding 50 million cubic feet a day, so only the big guys. Bill revises several rules governing production taxes on oil and gas. Department of Revenue may require producers to pay gas production tax in gas rather than money if it determines doing so is in the state's best interest. Beginning this year, the bill would disallow certain deductions. Costs to explore, develop, or produce North Slope gas may no longer be deducted when calculating oil production gas tax. I mean, everything about this is making the project harder to find agreement. Bill requires AGDC to publish a searchable website listing project investors, ownership structures, gas purchase agreements, foreign participants. It doesn't specify here in the summary, and I'd have to look at the bill specifically as to when the expectation of these identifications happen. Is this after the agreements, or is this if you're talking to them? When would you be required to publish that information? In the summary, it doesn't say, so I'd have to get into that. Okay, so there's effective dates. Okay, so I asked the question, what effects could this bill have on the AK LNG pipeline project? Just now I want to see what kind of an assessment that AI can have on, compare what is known of the project to this bill. Anyway, I want to see what you guys have to say here. Hello all, gotcha. Thanks. Yeah, I got 100 subscribers. Thanks for noticing. Appreciate all your support and all your help in getting over that 100 mark. That's just kind of a good feeling for me that there's at least 100 people out there that want to support the show. It doesn't do much for YouTube. If you're unaware, I got to get to 1,000 subscribers before things change with YouTube. So long road to haul, but we're going to do our best to provide value. And as long as you keep passing the word and we keep growing, then we'll get there eventually. But I appreciate all your support. Sure appreciate Michael Dukes having me on the show every week and promoting my effort here as I try to get off the ground. Yeah, the gas line that we've been waiting for since the late 50s. Obviously, somebody on the Senate Resources Committee is telegraphing that they don't really want the pipeline. That's what I'm taking away from this, because you don't do this to make it easier to get a pipeline. Did you see the bidding for, let's see. Did you all see the bidding for Cook Inlet silence except for 1-600? Yeah, I saw some headline or something. I haven't read anything into it, but there was only one track or one bid. Doesn't bode well for industries forward looking, their projections on whether it's profitable to business in Cook Inlet, right? Man. I am going to have to pull up Stapp's speech. I understand he gave a floor speech. Maybe we'll cover this on one of these shows, commentary on this subject. Yeah, I have heard from others that it was a good talk. Christopher says the LNG gas pipeline is already being placed on the North Slope. That's interesting. News to me. If you're up there and you're seeing the pipe being laid or the foundations being set, then you know more than I do. What happened to limited government? Yeah, to be honest, I'm looking at this and I'm saying this is socialist, quasi-communist. Like 100%. The bill is trying to codify in law that the state of Alaska will be owners, operators of this project, right? I can't take away. I could stop and just say, look, maybe the people on the committee, Senator Giesel, Senator Wielechowski, Senator Clayman, I think are the ones that are pushing this. Maybe Senator Kawasaki. And I can say they really believe that this is in the best interest of the state, right? Like that's where they come from. That's the lens they're looking through. And they think this is the best interest of the state. But the reality is, whatever lens they're looking through, this type of policy has very negative impact, would have a very negative impact on being able to put any projects together. So they're either naive or they're ignorant of the truth of the reality, or this is just openly hostile to the project, in my opinion, because nothing here is going to help us secure a natural gas pipeline. Okay, so what effects would this have? Just curious here. So this is a fun part of the show here. What does artificial intelligence say could be an impact to the project? Senate Bill 275 would materially affect the governance, financial structure, and economics of the AK LNG project if enacted, right? I think the likelihood is very, very slim that the governor would ever sign this bill. Matter of fact, I don't think there's ever, it has a snowball's chance in hell. I think the governor would veto it in a heartbeat. Bill does not directly cancel or authorize the project, but introduces new legislative controls. Okay. what the bill requires. It requires the AGDC that if AGDC negotiates participating in revenue sharing, it's going to have to notify Alaska, and we covered this a few minutes ago, of the option of the state of Alaska to acquire an ownership interest or management interest in the fund. Now, the state of Alaska still has 25% ownership stake in this project, but in order for us to exercise that, we're going to have to come up with some funds. Like, you're talking billions of dollars of the state of Alaska. If we want to maintain our interest, we're going to have to put in like other interested investors are. So I don't think the state of Alaska is going to be able to do that. Like, I don't expect the legislature to come up with billions of dollars to help fund this project. So that 25% ownership, I think, is going to go away. I think somehow, like, I don't know how it's going to work itself out, but so what this does is effects on this or other projects, right? Creates a mandatory legislative gate for any state equity position. So you can't get a project off the ground without the state legislature deciding whether it wants to be an owner or not. So it forces AGDC to be impotent, like it cannot independently commit to a project. I guess I should say commit the state to an equity participation in the project. Project negotiations would slow because of the legislative approval that would be required. Yeah, I mean, how many committees would have to talk about this, and how many speeches on the floor, and how long would it take for the legislature to be able to act? This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Investors may face greater political risk. You think? Yeah. Legislative approval for foreign investors. AGDC may not enter into legal relationships with a foreign entity without legislative approval. So how are you going to get a multi-billion-dollar project off the ground if you don't have investors and partners overseas who are going to be your purchasers? And here, you're going to have to wait on the legislature to make that happen. Like, the legislature is going to have to vet your... I just... You know, if this would work, right? If this would work, we'd already have a project, because the legislature has wanted we created AGDC a long time ago, Alaska Gasline Development Corporation, a decade ago, to go and do this. We wouldn't have had to do that, right? Just create the corporation, and then we would just go out and find our own buyers, and the legislature could manage this. Like, so means that any partnership with Japanese, Korean, or other foreign utilities could require legislative approval before we would do business with them. Slower negotiations, higher financial risk, greater transparency, which is a good thing. But it would never result in greater transparency, because the foreign entities would never agree to this. New taxes on the pipeline. Okay, so we'd have a 9.4% income tax. This could increase the effective tax burden if the project uses partnerships or pass-through structures. Lower after-tax returns for investors. And at what point did the investors say, you know what, 9.4% is a little too high, and we walk away? Like, this is codifying that it has to be 9.4. Pressure to structure the project using C corps instead of pass-through entities. All right. What about the gas surcharge here? Gas surcharge would increase operating costs for the LNG plant. So if the exports are roughly 3.5 billion cubic feet a day, the annual surcharge, $191 million a year by AI math. I don't know if that's accurate or not. We're not going to rely upon Grok or ChatGPT for that math. We'll ask legislative finance to put those numbers together. The math is probably good, though. Math is one thing that the AI engine here is actually pretty capable at. But what it does is it challenges the project margins. It makes the margins slimmer, and therefore your investors and your managers are like, you know what, this is not as lucrative as I need it to be. Reduce state competitiveness versus other LNG exporters, right? It's like the people who created this bill think that the Alaska Gasline project exists all by itself outside of a world where there's other LNG entities and other projects going on, right? That, like, there's no competition. Like, Alaska is the center of the universe and we get to do whatever we want to do. Damn what kind of a position it puts us in relation to competition. Like, that's why I say, I think that the bringing this bill forward, regardless of whether it passes, it telegraphs to our potential investors and other partners what the legislature is actually thinking. Now, it doesn't pass, so you can say, well, the majority of the legislature is not thinking this, but it's only a matter of time and a couple election cycles, and then maybe this does pass. I mean, what it does highlight, in my opinion, is this next election. I think Kathy Giesel is up for election. This ought to be, if LNG project fails, you ought to hang this around her neck and say, you're the one that telegraphed that we didn't want to do business with anybody on AK LNG. We didn't want a pipeline. AGDC must publish investors, lenders, ownership percentages, gas purchasers, whether entities are foreign or domestic. Okay, so if there's a time frame by which this data becomes public, like after agreements are made, I might be on board with something like that because it is a public project, right? Or at least a portion of it is public. I might be inclined to support some of that, but not at the expense of the project. Not if this is going to be a showstopper for individuals, right? Again, 75% of this project is a private project now. 25% of it is a state project. So at the point where the state says we're not going to invest any more dollars, we're not going to help fund the project as an owner of the project, then your right to all of this information, in my opinion, goes away because it's no longer a public project. So it remains to be seen how the legislature is going to exercise that 25% interest. Let's see. Senate Bill 275 allows the state to require payment of production taxes and gas rather than cash. And I think this is fairly normal, or at least it's industry standard in Alaska. We do the same thing with oil. Limits in deducting gas development costs. Again, I go back to this gas structure piece of this. It doesn't have much of an impact on the project. Not too controversial. Limits on deducting gas development costs. The bill disallows certain deductions for North Slope gas development costs in calculating oil production taxes. So basically a tax increase, if you will, or at least just not allowing deductions. So increases tax liability for producers developing gas. Producers may push for separate fiscal terms for the gas supply. So let's just talk briefly about the strategy here. 275, which would likely shift the project towards longer legislative control and higher transparency, but potentially higher fiscal burden. We don't have a project yet. There's no agreement. You got a company that says they want to take on the challenge of bringing the project to fruition, but we don't have an agreement. We don't have a final investment decision, and we don't have that yet. So I think one of the things that AI missed here is this, if your business partners don't agree to the changes that you make here, then you don't have a project. You don't have a project. This is the whole thing with Senate Bill 108 that the legislature created, 10 years ago, that created AGDC and this whole effort. Nobody bit. No, the majors, BP, Conoco, Exxon, they all stepped out. They all said, this is not going to work. The structure is not going to work. That was a state ownership structure. Wasn't going to work. So this bill gives us greater legislative oversight of state participation, and it's funny. AI is calling that a positive effect. I'm thinking that's not a positive effect. Greater legislative oversight, that doesn't mean what you think it means. Improved transparency. I think as long as we've got a public project, improved transparency is great. Again, is it going to remain at least a partial public project? Mechanism to secure state gas supply. We already have that. Potential state revenue from LNG, but we're already going to have that. Negative, increased costs. Taxes on additional taxes. Legislative approval. Possible slower deal. You think? No, this is like guaranteed slower deal making. That's what that means. All of the deals that are being made now without legislative input have been taking way too long, in our opinion, right? Like we're like, hey, give us a final investment decision. Let's get this get this show on the road. Like we are ready to have a pipeline built. Here, the legislature is saying, whoa, 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 whoa. Let's slow down. Hold your horses. We have not provided our input yet. You need us to bless off on this project before you can move anywhere. Before you can start laying pipe and building things, we have to approve it. Bottom line, ChatGPT says more politically controlled, more transparent, but potentially less attractive to private business investors because of added taxes and approval requirements. A legislatively governed mega project. Who thinks that a legislative governed mega project has a chance in Alaska for success? I can't wait for next Friday where this bill comes before Senate Resources and the legislators who created this promote their bill. We're gonna cover that. I cannot wait. This is, I don't know, maybe I'm a geek or glutton for punishment or something. I don't know. This is something that is exciting to me. Like we're gonna see a bunch of idiots on recorded. It's live, but it'll be recorded. We're going to see them defending this bill and telling us why they think it's the best thing. And these people get elected and reelected. The interior needs its own spur line when and if this project happens. You're absolutely right. It would be a travesty if the pipeline was built and you did not get natural gas to the interior. I happen to know that is not the plan. You guys, there is going to be a spur line so that the interior has gas. I am very confident in that. Can I guarantee it? Nope, because I'm just me. But I'm confident that that's what they would. That'll be Friday the 13th. It certainly will be. Yes. That'll be fun. What could go wrong? Yeah. Like I said, and I take a step back. I'm having fun. I'm poking at this because it's really easy to poke at. There's zero chance that this bill actually becomes law. Zero chance. So why do it? Why do it? Is it from an altruistic position of the Democrats on the Senate Resources Committee? And let me just, Democrats and Republicans, I don't know what it means because you got a Republican chair and a Democrat vice chair. The left of center anti-oil and gas legislators. because you can't say Democrat, you can't say Republican. You got two, one of each or multiples on the committee, and it doesn't make any sense. And people are like, huh, why? How did a Republican put this forward? This is a Republican chair, a Republican bill. How does that happen? I guess I should explain that. The chair of the committee is the one that has to authorize a committee bill. That's what happens in the legislature. So you don't get a committee bill like this unless the chair, the Republican, so-called Republican legislator wants this bill. So if it's not going to pass the legislature, why bring it forward? Why would you do this? It may just be simple. This is election year. We can get legislative legal to draft up a bill that then it becomes a legitimate bill. It gets its hearing and it doesn't go anywhere, but I can claim that we gave it our best shot. And I go back to my liberal constituents, my anti-oil and gas constituents, and say, look, we tried. We tried. We're just a few votes short. I don't know. Why else would you do it? Why would they want to stop this, which would be the great energy saver and which would save Alaska on bills? Look, there's two things at play here that I think that are factors. One of them is the fact that Glenfarne was selected to be the company, the entity that takes the project forward. And at the time that Glenfarne got selected, there was another group of people, former Governor Walker and Labor, wanted and were in active discussions with AGDC to do what Glenfarne is doing now. My understanding is that group of people could not come up with the $120 million. We couldn't show them the money. Couldn't come up with the money that says, hey, we'll take over this part of the project. Remember, when Glenfarne stepped in, they brought in $120 million of their own money to finish front-end engineering and design. And they have if the project does not get built now, Glenfarne's been around doing this for about a year. If the project doesn't go forward now, they have no way to recoup their money. Their $120 million or whatever they ended up spending in finishing all of the work that they've done, all of the labor, all of the research, all of everything. They don't have a profit, a way to generate revenue to get their money back because the project doesn't go forward. So the risk is entirely on them. So AGDC is looking at this other entity, other labor-centric entity and saying, hey, show me the money. My understanding is they couldn't do that. So Senator Giesel, Senator Kawasaki, Senator Wielechowski, Senator Clayman, all really friendly with labor unions. So is this the reason that this is coming forward, is that you've got behind the scenes labor's like, hey, if we can just scuttle this, then we'll be the next one to step in and we can make it happen. And the state, this socialist idea will carry the day. I don't know. Maybe that's the end play here, is to knock out Glenfarne and then the next entity goes forward. Because, I mean, if you think about it, this bill is really saying that the state's getting screwed because the state should be the owner and the manager of the project. Okay. So if you believe that, if that's where if it's an altruistic thing, like you really do believe that's the best way for projects to get managed, and it's the best thing for Alaska is for for it to be a government-run project, then this is your bill. This gets us back to where they thought they were with Senate Bill 108. Or maybe it was Senate Bill 180. Let me very quickly, because this is like on the record, so let me do a quick search here. Senate Bill 180. Oh, you know what? Never mind. I can't do that this quick. That bill was passed many years ago, a decade ago. This is not going to tell me that right now. This is current bill, Senate Bill 180 in the current legislature. All right, never mind. So, but what I'm getting at is the claim or the argument is that the project has left the designs of the law that created AGDC back in the day, and I think this bill is getting. Since Wielechowski and Giesel are the ones that brought this up, their bill is now attempting to get the project back in line with what they thought they wanted, a state-run project. Nobody wanted to build a state-run project. The private industry is like, well, we don't want Alaska legislature as a partner. Are you kidding me? Are you crazy? We're not doing that. No way. These people think that's the center of the universe, that they're somehow important. The private individuals and private companies out there are like, yeah, you're important in your own mind. We're not bringing our money and time and effort and becoming a partner with you. We're not doing that. You got a private entity that knows what they're doing, Glenfarne, who's done other big projects. Others are saying, okay, I can partner with you. And now we've got a project that's moving forward. As long as the state oversees the project and don't spend any money, which they don't have, this will happen. The bill will happen? I think what you're saying is that the project would not happen if the state attempts to do this. Anyway, I go back to this. This is the question. Why would they want to stop this project, which would be a great energy saver for Alaska? Why would they want to stop that? I think that is a legitimate question, because that's what the end result of this bill would do if you passed it, right? And again, you're never going to get the governor to sign it, so it's not going to pass. But why would you do something that's going to challenge? I think that's a legitimate question. So we talked about one reason why, which was there's an alternative group of people who wanted to be Glenfarne. They wanted to have the power to build the project. The other part of this is that there are business interests inside and outside the state that would benefit if you didn't have a pipeline. So South Central Alaska is running out of gas. We are going to have to import LNG, whether we like it or not. That's likely going to be the thing that, everybody's saying it. Unless you've got Hillcorp, and my understanding is that Hillcorp's drilling a bunch of wells. Their next season here is going to be a bunch of wells being drilled. If they find more gas, then maybe we stave off the shortage for a little while. But you just had a bunch of leases go, nobody wanted to bid on them. So there are few private companies that want to go put up a gas well in Cook Inlet and go drill for gas. Ironically, you're not going to find any legislators out there working on an oil rig, gas rig. They're not going to be out there building a pipeline. These yahoos. So the point is, if we're going to run out of gas and the alternative to running out is importing LNG, and that is what industry is pushing for right now. You got two different groups that are trying to put an LNG import terminal down here in Nikiski. One of them is Glenfarne and Enstar. And then the Hillcorp version is refurbishing the old ConocoPhillips export facility that's right here in Nikiski. I drive by it every time I go to town. Okay. Refurbishing what is there is probably going to be done. Might be more expensive, I don't know, but it's going to be done sooner than building a new import facility. So the point here is there's money and plans going forward to build an import facility, an import capability for LNG, because that's what everybody sees as the future. It is more likely that we're going to have to do that than somebody going out and finding gas in Cook Inlet. Okay. So if that's the thing that's happening, then you've got to ask the question, if people are pushing that direction and this pipeline is getting built, there's a lot of effort and a lot of future plans on importing LNG that would be thwarted eventually with a pipeline being built. You wouldn't need to import LNG. It would drop the price out of natural gas locally, and it would be way too expensive to import LNG. So you wouldn't do it anymore. So whoever's going to benefit from the importation of LNG does not want a natural gas pipeline to get built from the slope. If you're talking decades of sale of LNG to Alaskans, you do not want the AK LNG project to be successful. You do not want it. Your bottom line is going to be beneficial. Like, it's going to be beneficial for you to be selling LNG to Alaskans into the future. So who benefits from that? Well, that's the important question. I think that the most likely source of LNG that Alaska would be buying would be the source that is closest to us. And that's from Canada. So the company that owns NSTAR has a stake in the LNG export business that Alaskans would be buying LNG from. So is there a connection between NSTAR and the legislators who are putting forward a bill like this? I don't know. Is the parent company lobbying these legislators from Canada? Like, I don't know. I'm scratching my head to try to figure it out, because that bill don't make sense. That bill kills any hope that you have of a pipeline. So you've got to ask yourself, are the legislators that brought the bill forward that ignorant? And I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that they are devious. They're smart. They know what they're doing. So I think it's probably likely that the bill is a way to telegraph to voters in an election year. I think it's a way to telegraph that you really don't want the pipeline. You're going to give your best effort to scuttle the pipeline. You can't actually enact it because you don't have enough support to do that. So that's what you're going to do. You're going to make as much noise as you can. If the end result of all that noise is uncertainty and people outside the United States, partners outside of Alaska, get cold feet and they're like, you know what? I don't know if this legislature is really trustworthy. I'm going to get in partnership with you. We're going to get this down the road, and then the legislature is going to change the law and increase taxes and make this whole thing not feasible. I mean, that's possible. And then the result is the thing gets scuttled. The project gets scuttled. The one positive thing that I see in the bill is the transparency piece, because I'm fundamentally, as a limited government guy, I really do appreciate transparency. But even transparency at the wrong time makes it harder for the project to go forward. So I'm scratching my head. It doesn't make any sense to me from a project management, from a vision perspective, from a we want to be good partners perspective. It's sending the entire wrong message. The whole thing is sending the wrong message. So it literally is telling me that some people do not want to have the natural gas pipeline built. That's the conclusion that I come to. That, and you're telegraphing something to your constituency that you're going to be asking for votes in November. Those are the two things that I can take away from this. I mean, I guess Friday we will hear from the sponsors, and potentially it's it's going to look good. They're going to have, a very concerned look on their face, and they're going to have their talking points lined up. Probably something about, hey, we've got a budget deficit, and we're hurting for money, and we really need to get our fair share from a pipeline, and blah, 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 blah. And they'll have their excuses. I can't wait to hear it. The bottom line is, whatever their excuses are, they're not going to be addressing the situation. This, if we enacted it, would mean you wouldn't have a pipeline. So all of we wish we had more money from this project. You can wish for that, and 9% of this, or whatever the tax rate is now of something that actually is going to get built, is going to be more than 9% of nothing. So state trying to make revenue for the state with this pipeline, that's their concept. Yeah, if you just do a thought experiment for a second, Christopher, this is actually interesting. Look, if you've got Kathy, I don't believe this for a minute, but if you've got Senator Giesel and Senator Wielkowski who are thinking, hey, you know what? We could be pipeline owners. This can be our pipeline. We'll just enact a law that says you got to come to the legislature, and we're resources committee, so it's all going to have to come through us, and we'll be able to manage this pipeline. You don't get partners with that. Like, you need people to want to buy your gas, and you are not trustworthy. They're not going to do that. So you're trying to dabble in business that you have no business being in. Anyway, I'm going to continue to do some research and talk to folks, because I do really want to understand. Governor had a comprehensive fiscal plan package that he put out. It had a tax bill in it. It had a statewide sales tax in it, but it also had other tax related and oil and gas tax related issues. What I would really like to better understand, and I do not believe that Glenn Farn or maybe AGDC's been on. I need to double check this, but I don't understand what the ask is. And I need to. We all do. We need to understand what the project owners, the managers and the developers of the project are saying that they need to make things economical, to make the project work. What do they need the state to do? Maybe where they're at right now is, we need the state to do nothing. Matter of fact, if the legislature could just wrap up its business in the next 30 days and go home, we'd be perfectly happy. like you all meddling is the worst part. That's the worst thing you can do. Just do nothing. Go home, go be with your families. Let us handle this. We'll get the project done, and you'll get your tax revenue based on current law. Maybe that's what, I mean, after seeing this, I would imagine that Glenn Farn, AGDC, they're like, yeah, okay. How do we survive till May when the session has to end, right? Nobody's going to call a special session this year because it's an election year. You can't fundraise while you're doing special sessions. I imagine the governor at this point, looking at this bill, he's like, oh God, how can we get this legislature to end its business and go home? The worst possible thing that we could be having right now is a legislature in session. Anyway, I would like to know what Glenn Farn and what the project actually needs, what it thinks it needs from the legislature for any modification to tax rates or whatever. I would like to know that, and I think the public would like to know that. I think the majority of the public understands that this is a big project. And if all of the powers that be, I mean, you're going to get your naysayers, I'm sure, but if all the project sponsors say, hey, look, we recognize that we have to pay taxes. We're not trying to avoid paying any taxes. We would like the tax rate to be set at this percent. And then you have a discussion starting at that point. Is it that? Is it something slightly larger? I doubt that it's 9.4%. You could probably look at other LNG projects, and this is what happened in Canada. In order for them to get their pipeline built, their taxing structure, their taxing authority had to reduce their appetite on what they were going to obtain by taxes. This has already been spoken to in the legislative session. It's already on the record. This is what's happened. Okay. So you can look at other jurisdictions and how they've approached the tax situation as kind of an example on what we would need to be competitive for our pipeline that's ungodly long and, hugely expensive. We're gonna have to be competitive with other pipelines that weren't as expensive and aren't as long and don't run from the North Slope of Alaska, right? What is it that we need to be competitive? That bill is not communicating that. It's the exact opposite. It's like, we don't care. We don't care what would be competitive. We don't care what the industry needs. We don't care what competitors are doing. We don't care about any of that. We're just so self-centered that this is the way we want to run it. Like, dumb. It's dumb. Can you say confidential? That has been said so much. Sorry, Lisa. It is getting late. I was up early. I need a little bit more context here. Can you say confidential? Are you talking about the transparency? Because I would think that transparency and confidential are that's probably what you're getting at. Please help me out. I'm not sure what you mean by confidential. I know that there is a way, and the legislature's contractors, advisors that they've paid for, they said that they have worked this type of situation before, where the contractor, the consultant, is kind of the middleman who signs the non-disclosure, the agreement to not disclose the real important details, and they're provided access to it. And this is from the producers and the buyers. So the business entities that want to, for their own reasons, they've got to maintain some confidentiality. I think that's what you're getting at. So they maintain that confidentiality, and then the consultant comes back and explains to legislators in a way that doesn't breach the confidentiality what needs to happen. Some trust put in that individual or in that consultant, but it's a way to get from private entities that don't want public disclosure of their data for legitimate reasons, and a demand or a need for some sort of public transparency. So there's a way to work around that. At some point in time, you gotta trust but verify. Okay, you said legislature has asked and no answers from Glenfarne. I don't know that to be true. And I don't know where that's being reported. Maybe it's true. I don't know. I know that it is going to be, it's hard pressed before you have agreements, before you've got a final investment decision, before you've got all of your T's crossed and your I's dotted and people on board, to go divulging parts of plans that are confidential. That is frowned upon in industry and putting these large projects together. The legislature and the public may not like that, but that's the reality of the private projects. And you don't have, and nor will you ever have, a public entity that's able to do what Glenfarne has done. AGDC couldn't do it. They spent a decade trying to do it and they couldn't do it. We had partners at the very beginning, private partners. I already said BP, Exxon, Conoco, that all said, peace out. See ya. We're not doing this. So you don't live in the world. There isn't a spot in the world where, because it's a public project and you want full transparency, that's what this bill is. Give us full transparency or nothing. Well, you're going to get nothing. You're going to get nothing because the private industry does not operate that way. So you got to find a middle ground there. Dare I say compromise, but that's what you got to do. Maybe it's a question of timing. When do we have access to this data? After the decision's been made? Yeah, fine. You're not coughing up any money, state of Alaska. You know, if this is a $40 billion project or whatever it is, and the state of Alaska is not giving out any money to build that, yes, we have spent hundreds of millions of dollars getting through all of the permitting process, right? We've put in our time, we put in our money, we've gotten it this far. It's all been public money paying for that. But actually getting through construction and building, the billions of dollars that we would put down, we're not going to do that. I'm very confident the legislature is not putting any money out of they can't out of the permanent fund. They could out of the ERA, the earnings reserve account. It's got a couple 10, 12, 14 billion dollars in it. They could put a couple of that billion down towards the pipeline, but they're not going to. You only got $3 billion in the CBR. $1 billion in your PCE fund, $1 billion in your higher education fund. That's it. You don't have the money to be. I guess you could bond for it. Are the people of Alaska going to agree to go into debt to buy your 25% ownership into the company, into the project? I doubt it. Not if industry's willing to foot the bill. And all we get in return is an endless supply of low-cost gas and some portion of taxes and royalties. That's all we get. I mean, we're better off than we are now because we don't have either of those two things. All that public money to pay for the study that requires that to be studied also. You mean a study for the study? We're past the study part. We're approaching the final investment decision where, and this is my understanding, Glenfarne has already gone out to shipbuilders to say, hey, look, we're going to need half a dozen ships or how many ever ships we need to transport LNG. So need you to put it on the calendar. How long is it going to take? When can you get started? You're going to have to put orders for steel. That takes a while. Pipe is going to have to be shipped in. It's going to have to be manufactured somewhere else. And that steel's got to be created. So there's a time frame on how long that takes, right? So better get started if we want to be laying pipe by the end of the year. All of those things need to be telegraphed and communicated and agreements reached on that before an investment decision can be made. Because what if you can't get the pipe? The manufacturers, look, there are some significant amount of infrastructure that's going to need to be rebuilt in the Middle East, and we really just can't get pipe built in time. Well, then the investors aren't going to give their money to get the project going because you can't build it. You don't have the capacity to manufacture the pipe. So those agreements have to be in place before you have a final investment decision. Rick says, did I hear or read that they will be clearing spots on the route and dropping camps? Yes, that they are moving in that direction right now. My understanding is that the orders have gone out, or at least the pre-orders have gone out for pipe. And I don't know the difference between a pre-order and an order and whether I'm using the right terminology, but the manufacturers of steel have been notified that we're going to need some pipe. Again, those producers, those manufacturers of pipe have to come back to the project and say, yes, we can produce the pipe in the time frame that you need it before you have a final investment decision. That's like, if you're an investor, you're not going to throw your money in there to a project that can't be built because the people who make pipe have said, no, we can't do that. Why would I give you my money? So all of those details have to be arranged before you go to a final investment decision. I doubt they have LNG 42-inch pipe for this pipeline stage in Fairbanks by now. I highly doubt that. There may be pipe stage there, but it's not LNG pipeline. If they do, that's significantly amazing to me. That's crazy. That would be impressive. Anyway, well, so stay tuned next week. We're going to make this a priority to hear what Senate Resources has to say about this bill. I can't wait. I kind of wish that I could do this live, because it would be a whole lot of fun to just be watching this happen and react instantaneously as these people are talking. But y'all aren't going to join me at whatever time, 3:00 in the afternoon or 1:30 in the afternoon that this is happening at. Rick says you calculated the amount of pipe several months ago. It's great. Yeah, it's a lot of pipe. It's not just a straight line. I mean, it's somewhat of a straight line, but it's not a straight line. You got, I don't know. I'm not a pipe guy, but I know you got off takes and got to have room for pigs and cleaning and maintenance and all the stuff that goes into building large pipelines. So not just a straight line, it's a lot of pipe. They have it on Phillip Field Road stacked pretty high. Well, I've got friends in the industry too, and it's not that I don't believe you, but I mean, is it possible that 42-inch pipe was just laying around in someone's yard down in the lower 48 or wherever they made it, Japan? I don't know. It was just laying around waiting for someone to buy it. I kind of doubt that. I mean, the orders that I saw come from Glenfarne, and they weren't exactly purchase orders. They were notifications that this is the direction we're headed. That was only a few months ago. maybe a year ago by now. I don't know, but it seems like that enough time has not expired that we've actually got pipe built and transported. But I could be wrong. I'll reserve my judgment on that. Okay, if you say the pipe's stacked already and ready to go in the ground or go get installed, then who am I to argue? But I'm skeptical. Let's just put it that way. Skeptical's good. I see what you did there. Good stuff coming down the pipe. Yeah, I really do think that this project is moving forward, especially what's happened in the Middle East right now. Did you see that UAE said that their LNG export facility is going to be down for 30 days, at least? And who knows how long it is down, how long this problem in Iran continues. Significant disruption in LNG and oil exports. And that is going to have an impact all throughout our economy for at least for the short term. 2026 that's going to be a major impact for 2026. Go measure it. Yeah, somebody, when you drive by it next time, you throw a tape on there and tell me if it's 42 inches and a half inch. Tell them Ben wants to know. I imagine that there are construction projects on the slope where pipe is sitting there waiting for, but it has nothing to do with the natural gas pipeline, or at least this portion of the natural gas pipeline. Maybe they're leaning forward and building their portion that they need to connect to this pipeline, but I can't say it anymore. I'm skeptical that any pipe that's sitting in Alaska is actually a 42-inch pipe for this pipeline. I think that's still a ways out. Prove me wrong. I'll eat crow. Be happy to prove me wrong. Anyway. Yeah, I've got to go too. Rick, thanks for joining us. Folks, again, great appreciation for you participating consistently and helping raise awareness for the show. I am sincere when I say if there are things that you have heard about that you want me to make and prioritize and discuss, it would be no different than being open to a question that you have and trying to answer it on real time, sharing my experience. If there's something that you're burning to hear about in the legislature, then let me know. Send me an email, send me a text here, and I will do my best to research it and get it on air, because this is about us as a people and as voters being up to speed on things. And I've got my focus. I realize that I've got my focus. So help me out if there's something else that you think is important that you want to hear or see about, then let me know and we'll make it happen. All right. That's it for the show tonight, guys. Thanks for joining me. It's been great. Have a great night. It's Thursday, almost the weekend, and I've got snow coming in the morning and my tractor has died. I've got a thermistor that I got to fix and they can't get it till me till Monday. So we're going to be, hopefully there's not a whole lot of snow coming. I'm crossing my fingers because I don't have a way to deal with it right now. Anyway. All right. Have a good night. We'll see you tomorrow.